think we can go ahead and get started. It is the time, correct? Yeah. So, and I'm sure Commissioner Martin will show up. He'll just join right in. So if we may have the roll call, please.
Commissioner Chan?
Here.
Speak.
Commissioner Chang Frank?
Here.
Commissioner Kent? Here. Commissioner Sardinas?
Present.
Commissioner Trinkle?
Here.
Commissioner Martin?
Here.
And Chair Abbott?
Here. Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. I will read the land acknowledgement. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lejeune. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for the contributions which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. All right, very good. I guess we're moving on to the minutes. Folks have a chance to review the action minutes. We'll entertain a motion at any time.
Just a point of clarity, under the future agenda items, it was B City USA / the Mayor Monarch Pledge, potentially, I think.
A correction?
Well,
Or just
I'm trying to remember. It's fine.
Well, now's the time.
Otherwise, yes, I move that we approve the minutes.
Okay, very good. Have a second? Did Charlie second? No, did somebody second? Yeah. Okay, very good.
So that was a second by Charlie?
I thought someone else did it, but I'll second it.
Okay.
Oh, okay, thank you. Commissioner Chan?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang Frank?
Abstain.
Commissioner Kent?
Yes.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Commissioner Sardinas?
Yes.
Commissioner Trinkle?
Yes.
And Chair Abbott?
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, very good. Sorry for calling you Commissioner Charlie. I forgot your last name. All right. Now is the time for public comment for people in the community to speak about items that are not on the agenda. I don't see a vast audience today in person. Do we have anybody online?
No one online.
Okay. Seeing no public comment, we will move on to announcements. Any announcements from commission members and/or staff?
If no commissioners have any announcements, then I'll go ahead and proceed.
I would just quickly mention, quickly mention that next Thursday, so a week from tonight, is the Solano Avenue Association annual meeting. It's a free event, lots of good food at California Bank and Trust, and if you would like to learn a little bit more about our business community, that would be a nice opportunity. 5:30 to 7:30.
And then last time I had mentioned the Albany Scouts Pancake Breakfast, and there were actually some commissioners there and some city council members there. It was really successful, and hopefully will continue next year.
I'm so happy you mentioned that because I might not have known it otherwise. So there's a purpose.
And then I was going to report on the reopening of the dog park, but apparently that was canceled. So does staff have any update on if that's going to be rescheduled or that was it?
So one of my announcements is the dog park ribbon cutting ceremony got rained out, so we unfortunately had to cancel that, and we are going to reschedule. As of right now, a date has not been determined, but we will keep everyone informed of that once we get a better date. But speaking of the dog park, here's a video shared by Brian Martin talking about the dog park.
And when you say shared by me, I saw it on social media, so I shared it with you, but
yes.
A member of the community created the video, and I thought it would be nice to share with
Excellent.
So here's the video.
Audio with it too, but I don't know.
I guess we will not be able to hear the audio.
Okay.
But you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. They were very happy with the dog park.
member of the public is excited to see the improvements at the dog park that some of us worked a long time on, and the city has definitely as well.
Oh, that's wonderful to see. Thank you.
So let's see if I can get more information about that for you guys.
Then, if the public is watching, their map was great, but they did mention enter,
Yeah,
and they pointed an arrow at the corner, which is the old entrance. But just so that everybody knows, the entrance is now at a different place around, like diagonal from there.
Which is not a criticism.
No, that was amazing. Yeah. Just,
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was great.
Okay.
Two other announcements. The summer catalog, the 2025 summer catalog has been posted online and features recreation and community services classes, seasonal camps, special events, and programs that take place between May and August. Programs offer a variety of ways to make sure your summer in Albany is filled with fun and enriching experiences. Hard copies are now available at all city facilities or can be mailed to you by calling the Recreation and Community Services Department at 510-524-9283. Registration has started last week and continues online or in person at the Albany Community Center at 1249 Marin Avenue. Second announcement is the Friends of Albany Park Cleanup. The Friends of Albany Parks is a city program that encourages residents and community members to form a strong or stronger connection with their favorite city parks and facilities. Come be a part of our next park cleanup this Saturday, March 22nd from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the community center. You can sign up by calling Joy White at 510-524-9283 or just by showing up. There will be snacks and beverages for all volunteers. They hope to see you there.
I believe 322 is the following Saturday, not this Saturday.
I'm just
I know you are. I know you are.
reading what I was
That wasn't for you. That was for the benefit of the people at home. You did great.
Thank you.
I might have caught it and read it properly. That doesn't matter. No, it was a good job. Is that it for announcements? Any other?
That's all I have.
Okay. Moving on then to presentations, our agenda item for the day. Capital Improvement Plan presentation. We'll receive a presentation, and we will provide feedback and ask questions, and off we go. So please.
Good evening, Commissioners. Happy to be back. This is the second presentation about the CIP update, and that's a little loud. I'm gonna push a little further away. Can you still hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So today I'm gonna be speaking from here instead of at the dais, which I'm very happy to do because now I can point to things a little easier. Let me get this shared. There we go. Apologies for that slight delay here. So I see some new faces today, so I'm going to do a quick overview. Hope we linked to the prior discussion in the agenda, and I hope that there was time for all of you to take a look at that. I spent quite a bit of time going over kind of our CIP, the CIP planning process, the CIP plan itself, and how they relate to projects. And I wanted to save you from having to listen to me again for 40 minutes. So, but if there's any questions at the end, I'm happy to explain, and can pull up the older slides as well. So I'm Allison Carrillo, CIP Program Manager at the City of Albany. For those of you who may look at the Transportation Commission or who have been watching City Council, you probably see me talk a little bit more about kind of paving projects, around sewer projects, around quite a bit of the other programs that we work on. and we'll be talking about a new program here tonight. So, just kind of lay out where we are here, which is the second Pros Commission meeting. We're hopeful that tonight, with the comments and questions that we receive, that we'll be able to bring this to a council study session in coming months, so we can discuss further with the capital improvement project plan as a whole, because there is kind of a balancing act that we need to make between desired projects, staff availability, funding, and community priorities overall throughout the project, and not just on or throughout the plan, and not just on the Parks Rep and open space. From prior presentation, I do want to clarify, so the CIP project is a distinct project generally, or a project within a program. So these have distinct beginnings and ends, and they have specific goals that we set out to achieve. And these can be a construction goal, it can be a plan development goal, it can be kind of some milestone goal for design development, programming, but it has to be something that's kind of has an end, at least on the project front. And again, programs do not generally have a clear beginning or end, but they consist of individual projects internally. Meanwhile, the CIP plan is a planning document kind of covering all the various projects, identifying the timing and funding for them, and making sure that we understand the roadmap to achieving our long-term city goals, and perform proactive CIP planning so that we can identify ways to move multiple projects forward at one time and not just a single project, or find strategies for proactive funding kind of considerations. The CIP plan itself is iterative. That means we may be going back to kind of the same project more than once, but trying to move it forward each time. And it's a living document. That means if something changes, we come back, we discuss a project, it gets added to the CIP. Now, every so often we have a situation like we have today, which is that we've gotten to a point in our kind of project delivery from the last CIP that it's ready for kind of a full CIP update, where we can talk kind of more holistically across the kind of Parks Rep and open space projects, and look at next kind of planning steps on larger projects, and in the case of the meeting today, proposal for that new parks program. Some of the important aspects, I think, of a CIP plan development that don't generally get the same kind of public kind of visibility is the importance of being able to identify our needs and goals. And so these are often planning studies, assessments, inventories to really understand what we have out there, and then these become foundational and supporting documents for development of future projects and milestones. These guiding documents are part of our discrete projects. So the CIP plan is organized in two pieces. There's a core program. Again, going back, we have a parks program that we are proposing tonight for comment, and discrete projects. These are generally enhancements, the guiding documents I spoke about, planning documents, things that have discrete beginning and end, and often go and come back and inform development of the core programs or individual project development. So speaking of kind of projects, we have kind of various levels of projects. There's some that are pretty straightforward, and these are often in our core programs where we're performing maintenance, maintenance style renewals, refreshes, things like this, where we discuss it at the appropriate advisory body. There's some initial project scoping, community engagement, we get some design, and it can be performed and implemented maybe in one single project, so that we don't have to create milestones where there's specific decision-making needs to occur. Projects can get quite complicated, but still fall under a single project delivery. So on a paving project, I pulled this from a paving project, we have a few more items that we need to coordinate with utility agencies. We have to refine our design multiple times with multiple engagements sometimes, and discuss both at a commission and a council level. This may occur in projects with the Parks program and Parks Rec and Open Space projects, discrete projects as well. And occasionally what we end up with is multiple visions that help inform a final delivery product. And so this may be something like we have a project, we want to improve the Albany Greenway. This is not something that can be done in a single project. It has multiple visions across multiple plans and citywide. And so there's an active transportation plan elements, there's the Parks Rec and Open Space elements, there's any number of things that will get fleshed out with additional kind of programming discussions and larger kind of plan development and refinement. And so this is an example of where each of these might have their own individual tasks coming to a final point in which we can actually deliver a construction project. Again, it varies, and this is part of this capital improvement project strategy that we're talking about tonight, is how do we keep these projects moving forward across both the core program for the Parks annual Parks Rehabilitation Program, and across discrete projects. We want to continue moving those forward in a way that allows us to seek grant funding and find ways to support our enhancements and also keep funding for our maintenance needs. So I at the very bottom here, let's see if you can see you can see where it says sufficiently developed. So I included that. This is something that sufficiently developed in the course of the CIP as planned. So it's generally a 5-year plan that we're looking forward 5 years on, but something like the Albany Greenway may not be a 5-year implementation. And so what we want to do is find those milestones where we can keep that moving forward within that 5-year period and execute and make sure that we see it to fruition. So this is just kind of going over how our guiding documents, things that we'll be discussing today, guide project delivery. So what we have here is a CIP plan consisting of multiple individual projects and with individual tasks. And the guiding documents are looked at the outreach engagement level. We talk about during project initiation, scoping, conceptual design, and it continues to inform and guide us throughout. If there's questions, we try to find ways that aren't easily answered or that come up often in the development of projects. It may be time to discuss additional guiding documents. And so this is what I mean by an iterative process. With that, I kind of covered the overview. Again, I wanted to keep that short given that we had the link to the previous presentation. We do have this update since our last presentation, which is that the dog park has been completed, although ribbon cutting was delayed. And Albany Hill Forest Management Plan was presented at our last meeting, I believe. And so we're looking forward now under this CIP update on delivery options and how do we get to the next step of starting construction. With that, you might recognize this from our Parks Rep and Open Space Master Plan. I have taken the slide from our last meeting, which was a little blurry, and reflected it in this slide. So in blue are projects that are in progress under various projects that are under the Prop 68 and other ongoing projects we have. In green are complete, and in purple are the ones that are ongoing as part of either capital projects or under other departments within the City of Albany. And just covering our recommended CIP projects. This is from the memo that was published earlier this week. As you can see, there's a lot of new projects and a full program proposed. I think cover this one first, which is the new annual Parks Rehabilitation Project. So this program is focused on maintaining our parks and making sure that we are taking care of what we already own, the assets we have already, and keeping them in a good condition. Projects that we discussed at our last meeting include tennis court refreshes, ball field refreshes, and play structures. So looking deeper into needs, we think that there's a tennis court refresh at Terrace that can be probably initiated sooner. Memorial Park ball field refresh is another one that was identified based on assessments by staff. And finally, in order to start our play structures and kind of prioritization on that, we're going to move forward with a safety assessment to identify which play structure needs the most immediate need. These projects under this program will be brought forward as needed and as appropriate per city policy. So we'll come back to discuss scoping, and staff in our assessments and scoping do look at not just the court paving needs, for example. We are looking at the court as a whole, and under this parks program, trying to incorporate other maintenance that can be done in conjunction, so that we can take advantage of a contractor who is out and able to perform the work. In terms of discrete projects, we're proposing an Ocean View sand volleyball court. That up here is a photo of the area that is being proposed. And this was proposed because there's a unused grass volleyball court, informal court that exists out there, and it's an ideal spot to be able to quickly implement a sand volleyball court. We heard a lot of urgency with that need. We're also proposing a citywide turf audit, part of the Parks, Rec, and Open Space Master Plan projects. Albany Greenway programming. Oops, let me get to that. And so this would be starting to discuss overall throughout what are we looking for, and be able to dial in maybe to local areas, because somebody who's at the north end may not be interested in what's on the south end, and vice versa. And it allows us to do more community outreach and engagement. We're also looking at, oops, I didn't have a good photo for that, the Albany Linear Park Fitness Furniture Upgrade as another project, and Pierce Street Park programming, which you see highlighted here. We did have some recent good news, which it looks like we were awarded a transportation grant to assist us in further developing the bikeway that is also proposed to come through here. And so we'll be able to move that forward with that grant and help inform our Pierce Street Park programming project. And finally, the Albany Hill Eucalyptus Project 1. So this is coming out of the Albany Hill Master Plan as Albany Hill Habitat Restoration and Eucalyptus Project. I think I got that one wrong, but I hope you guys understand. I hope I got enough that we understand which plan I'm talking about. Apologize. And then finally, what I wanted to show here today was this is the current progress we're making. With the projects proposed tonight, we are envisioning or see that we'll be able to touch on or move forward this following list of plans. So what you see here in dashed lines is, in yellow dashed lines, our potential integration. So these are ones where we can see as under the annual park rehabilitation program, there may be funding or opportunities for incorporation. Now, we can't guarantee it. It's going to depend on what kind of maintenance needs there are. But these are ones where perhaps the improvements are expected to be straightforward enough that if there is budget, funding, and timing, we may be able to include. And so we'll be assessing that as part of staff investigations into the scoping that we're going to be bringing back to this commission. And then in purple are projects where the guiding documents we are proposing in the CIP will allow us to move forward in being able to achieve those near-term and mid-term goals. What I mean here is, going back to the Albany Greenway, these are the Albany Greenway Park Programming Project touches on permanent restrooms, the exact location and the needs of that permanent restroom facility, and understand how we want to situate it. It also informs us, the turf audit specifically as well will allow us to understand where turf is needed, maybe where turf is less used. Maybe those are places we can now program on the Albany Greenway, additional facilities. And so understanding the needs on our turf will allow us to better be able to do the programming that we're proposing in years 3 and 4 of this plan. With that, our memo included the specific project sheets, the draft project sheets for review. I did not include this as a part of the presentation. They get a little dense. But I open this up for comment and question. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much. So before we go to general questions, the question I have is, what are you looking from us tonight?
So for tonight, any comments, questions? We are still going to, we can try to address them tonight, or if it's something that's a little more complicated, we can discuss with council. Ideally, we would like to hear all your comments so that we can then incorporate into any draft revisions on the project pages when we take it to City Council for the study session.
Okay, so let me just, this is fun stuff. This is where we get to think about the future, we get to think about spending money. Is this the time to brainstorm projects we'd like to see included, say, on the Albany Greenway?
That would not be something we would want to cover tonight. We would want your support in identifying the programming of that park in a future discussion. And then when we do the programming project, that would be a great time to start talking about what kind of additional.
So each of these would have an extensive public process where that would be the time for the fun stuff.
Absolutely, yes. The Albany Greenway programming, the Pierce Street Park programming, those are where we talk about the fun stuff on a big scale. We'll still talk about fun stuff tonight. And
sure.
Even on the annual Parks Rehabilitation Program, there's fun stuff ahead because we will be bringing those projects back as well before we start initiating them.
Okay, very good. So with that kind of clarified, I thought I'd open up for Commissioner questions.
My first question is, what is the sustainable landscapes? What does that encompass?
So sustainable landscapes defined in the Parks Rec and Open Space Master Plan is to look at removal of kind of underutilized turf and spaces and replacing them with more sustainable landscaping. Specifics, I don't have, it didn't go into enough detail for me to say specifically, but generally I would imagine this would cover things like taking turf and making it into drought-tolerant plants, rock gardens, potentially other activated space, things like that. Things like reducing water usage would be covered in our turf audit, where we have a baseline, and the Sustainable Landscape Project would then assist with being able to reduce some of our watering needs.
So it could also include like native pollinator plants? Okay. And then my other question, so that I can yield to other folks, is, and this will probably be familiar to some of the commissioners. So back when I was on the commission 4 years ago, we were trying to determine what to do with sugar-sweetened beverage money, and there were a number of projects, some of which like in the sites that were discussed, like the volleyball court, and then there was also like a swing proposed at Terrace Park, and I believe both of those were approved, but never happened. Like they were approved by the commission, and I was just curious if I could hear about like what happened and why, and as you know, different things were proposed. Thank you.
I can address that. So a couple things. First, sugar sweetened beverage is going to be on the next meeting, so we can discuss a little bit more. In terms of the accessible swings, they've been added to all the parks where they have swing sets, so that's been done. The volleyball court did not get funded, and so that's why we're incorporating it into the CIP. I'll just get to my future agenda items speech right now, but one of the things that I do is put together a memo and try to frame the things. And one of the things we can frame is there a contribution from sugar sweetened beverage to the volleyball court? Because if we can get funding for that, that frees up more funding for another project that we want to do.
Other questions?
I had a few questions. One is, there's 2 items for Albany Hill eucalyptus, and what would you say are the differences between them? I know there's the multiple phase that was envisioned as multiple phases, and one of the things in the staff report is phase 1, but the other one doesn't have a phase number.
So the first one is the active CIP project for the development of the plan. And so when that one's, it will be closed coming up.
Okay.
And then the kind of project 1 in the project pages, that's for phases 1 through 3 of the plan. So that is the pilot phase, the removal phase, and the restoration phase, first grouping of those. So there will be project 1, project 2, and project 3 moving forward, but with project 1 being the one that we're seeing in these, hopefully getting funding in the next, within the timeline of the CIP.
Good. So one of them pays the consultants, basically, who we saw presenting recently, and all that. Okay. And then let's see. What's for the Prop 68 items? Is that including all? Does that finish up? Is that funding for all of the Prop 68 things that we discussed?
So those are the existing projects that we've been discussing. The Prop 68 is being, I'm going to need probably Devorah's assistance, but Prop 68 projects, I think we're looking at potentially supporting it with some additional funding. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Hi, Devorah Zotter, Program Manager in Public Works, and I do the money. The Prop 68 projects were initially funded through available formulaic distributions through the state, through Prop 68. We had an estimation at the time for appropriate budgets for each project, but some of the projects were more scoped than others at the time, as described and decided in the PROS master plan. So as we are sequentially executing these projects, and developing scopes more fully, we are asking the council to appropriate further funds as needed, if needed.
Okay, so that's above and beyond the Prop 68 funds. So this is coming out of the general fund, is what?
It is above and beyond the Prop 68 funds. We have, in the past couple of projects, appropriated from Measure M funds to complete the parks projects.
Does that mean we're out of Prop 68 money?
So the allocation from Prop 68 was a specific amount, and it's delineated by project. So we can't move funds between projects within that allocation.
Okay, so the projects that haven't been started yet, they're fully funded by, or at least they still have all their Prop 68 money.
Yes, we are not losing any funds from Prop 68. For the projects that have been completed, we have utilized the full Prop 68 amount and then added additional local funds on top of that.
Great, thanks. And then I was curious which, for the bike park on there, there's a reddish dashed square, a rectangle around it. And so that, it says that means guiding documents proposed in CIP will support project development. And I was curious what part of what's in the CIP will support that?
So we're proposing to do a Pierce Street Park programming project to look at how we're going to situate everything. So to go into a little more detail, get a little bit more public engagement, but also figure out there's some grading that we'll need to do because the park is sloped and we need to make sure we maintain ADA access for everything, along with integrating trails and walkways in with the proposed ATP connection that's going through there. So the programming is really to be able to move us forward and hopefully seek grant funding if we can. Otherwise, it comes from local funds.
So this is more than the turf audit, because at Pierce Street Park there is that big oval of turf that's not being utilized or just is there. This is more than that?
Correct. This would be looking at the park as a whole. I think that I don't believe that there's anything really growing in that turf there. We've tried. It's
either
an
the
old
easiest
freeway.
or hardest one to audit. Yeah.
It's an old freeway off ramp or on ramp off ramp, so they didn't use backfill that grows things.
And then one last question is, for Albany Parks rehabilitation, you mentioned that Terrace Park Tennis Court refresh was one of the ideas or proposals, and I wanted to make sure that was going to come. Is that going to come before the Parks Commission? Because some of us have worked on some things there on multi-use facilities for those courts in particular that would need to come before us. I think just want to make sure that would happen.
Absolutely. Before we start any specific project scoping or before we finalize it, we would absolutely be coming back here.
All right, okay, that's it for me, thanks.
You know, a question I was going to ask you to do for the benefit of the folks at home, can you describe a little bit of what that public outreach process might look like for kind of in general?
I can try. I mean,
I know it's going to vary. I
think it's going to vary by project. Specifically for the annual Parks Rehabilitation Program, generally we're trying to just maintain. So we're not going to be planning at the outset to do major improvements, which may need more community engagement. This advisory body and this public forum is really our main point of community engagement. If there are larger programming projects, I think those may require some larger outreach. But we do see this as our main public forum for park-related projects.
So that means, for instance, somebody who's interested in participating could go up to the e-news and sign up for the PROSC news, and then they'd be aware of the agendas and they would know to come and speak. Okay.
Absolutely. And I understand that our e-news is getting upgraded. Maybe Devorah's, sounds like she's coming up.
I wanted to, I do money and media. So just to add on to what Allison said, while we absolutely encourage folks to come to the pros meetings, to come to the city council, to get involved, get educated, read our website, in other projects we've done in other areas, examples, so for the Albany Hill Eucalyptus Project, development of the plan, we had a site walk up on Albany Hill with great attendance. We had a community workshop where we invited feedback, and we're able to communicate the results of those things with posting on our website and communicating via e-news. So we encourage people to sign up for that, and hopefully with new website tools coming soon, we're hoping to have a more interactive way for people to sign up for specific projects.
Great, thank you. Appreciate that. So this is kind of for the commissioners. Do you want to go through each kind of sheet, or do you think we're doing fine?
Yeah, I got a couple.
But I mean, are they specific to specific sheets? We just go one by one, or do you just want to? I think we're probably doing fine now. Okay, we'll just do what we're doing. Okay, please. Who would like to go first here?
Mine are general. How does the park master plan fit into this? I know you had kind of a planning phase and an outreach phase, but didn't we sort of do a lot of with the park master plan? Or are you thinking of another outreach phase that focuses on each part of that plan?
So there was significant outreach and engagement with the larger parks master plan. But we do want to make sure that as we're dialing into our designs, that we continue that kind of public outreach. And so depending on the complexity of the project, again, that may be one-time meeting to initiate the project, doing some maintenance work, completing the maintenance and refresh work. But when you're talking about a large project, like a full park kind of build, one meeting isn't really enough. One Parks Master Plan isn't going to really dial in to the specifics of what you expect. So because it identifies, say, 2 or 3 facilities. There's a dog park. There's the bike park. There's the kind of multi-use field, and then there's the existing. But really, between those, we have things like how do we want the how do we want the paths to meander? How do we make sure they're ADA compliant? Where do we foresee some need for sustainable landscapes? Where do we have opportunities for that? And so this gives a chance for people who are engaged in different pieces of what might go into a park plan, to be able to have kind of more specific feedback. Additionally, for the Pier Street Park, and actually the Albany Greenway as well, for both of those, there's an active transportation bikeway shared use path that runs through them. And so we want to make sure when we're talking about what the ideas are, is that we're also talking to kind of advocates and people who are interested in the bikeway, and making sure we understand how everything works together.
Okay, so the same thing like the, since you had Albany Greenway programming, can't remember exactly what was shown on the park master plan, but I think they did kind of program uses, right? So then you know more, it's more than just programming, it's more about, it's actually physical form you're talking about. Okay.
So my sense is the information in the parks master plan would be the starting point to that, and it would be refined, you know, really exact what we want there, have pace changed, and then we get into all the ancillary things of pathways and connections to other things.
Okay, so along that same thing,
Can I add one comment just about the sort of macro versus micro planning? To add on to what Allison was saying, with the larger planning efforts, when we're looking at potentially grant fundable projects, a lot of times grantors want both of those levels of community engagement. They want to see that it fits into this larger vision for the city, but then that vision has been dialed into something to test kind of the current temperature.
it's not a strictly linear path, I understand that. It's a little bit of a halting kind of back and,
Yeah, and
you're advancing, but yeah, right.
Yes, advancing, kind of taking sort of a blurry sort of but beautiful picture and kind of zooming in and really sharpening that vision.
Okay, and then just a couple of terms I was confused. You mentioned, thanks for clarifying the Albany Hill eucalyptus is the habitat restoration, but you also mentioned the access plan. Is that, so there's more to be done with the Albany Hill access project?
Oh, the Albany Hill Access Project was the trail.
Is that complete?
That's complete. So
Well, I
that
thought
was the completed
still on the
list.
agenda happening, okay, it's completed, great, so that's what I thought. And then the last one was a street tree management plan, maintenance plan that I think it's underway now, almost completed. Is there funding to implement parts of that? Is that in here?
So now you're taking all my future items. We're looking at bringing the street tree management plan, sort of a real integrated draft of it to either the next meeting or the meeting after that, and then we'll talk about sort of what that means, because it does include some policy changes in how we manage trees, and that would drive costs. So we'd like to get feedback on that.
Okay. That's all my questions.
So I have just a general question about how baked this is. Like, is this a proposed, well, maybe stepping back from that, there's some certain amounts for, like, you know, park maintenance, that kind of thing, $200,000 over the course. Is that pretty consistent from past years that you'd expect that would be authorized by the city council?
That is what we are hoping that City Council will authorize, and based on what we think we can deliver and what we think our needs are, to reinvest back to maintain conditions. There are funds do cross kind of categories, so Measure M is used in various ways. So we can't, ultimately it is a City Council decision, but what we will propose tonight is what's here based, plus whatever kind of adjustments or refinements we talk about with you that come in, and we'll be proposing that as kind of a starting point of discussions.
And one clarification, what we're proposing here in the program is not maintenance work. It's capital reinvestment into existing facilities. And I think the biggest example of this is our play equipment, which we're having more and more difficulty getting replacement parts. So at some point, we have to replace replace them full stop. And this is our expectation of a spend that does that over time rather than all at once.
Right, yeah, sorry, I shouldn't have said maintenance, the rehabilitation program. But has that been like an ongoing cost?
No,
Usually-
so that's one thing, and we've progressively, or actually Allison has pushed this, progressively set up programs in sewers, storm drains, roadways where we want to prioritize capital reinvestment into our existing facilities so we don't have a steep drop-off and then have to have a big capital expenditure to bring them back up.
I think that's great, yeah, because otherwise it's unexpected and you had to beg for it, right? Then,
Right,
yeah,
and
to just be in there as part of an expected
And
maintenance.
it just keeps things at a level of service that's a little more acceptable because everything chugs along and then it's a steep drop off, and then it takes, if you start there, then it takes time to deliver a project and nobody's really happy.
And so I guess that kind of goes to my other question about how baked is this? Are you bringing it to other commissions before city council?
And we'll be taking similar kind of presentations for the kind of specific category of projects that those advisory bodies cover. Transportation Commission will likely be the next one to discuss. There are some categories of work that we do that don't have a specific advisory body, in which case council would be the advisory body to provide comment.
And I assume that like these projects aren't competing with each other, right? So like you've kind of thought about the budget. So it's like, oh, if they nix transportation, then we'll have more space for, yeah.
They're competing.
Yes, to speak to your question about whether it's baked, the projects that we've proposed to you tonight, while the sort of finalization of resources, we still have the operating budget is coming up, and some of these financial resources are shared across operating and capital expenditures. And there are some, but the projects that we've proposed kind of tonight in the scope are within the available resources that we think can be allocated. It's just the finalization of that picture, and exactly what that looks like will happen when we're working with the broader product.
Okay, great. Okay, and then I have the questions about a specific project, the sand volleyball court, which, thanks Commissioner Sardinius mentioning that it was on before us like 4 years ago. And so it's not, so my push to sort of hurry it is grounded in that history. But I'm curious because it shows the $25,000 for next fiscal year, right? And then I assume the building of it, the following. Is there any way to compress that? Is there any way to make that both this next year, given that they're discretionary funds and it's,
We are looking into options for trying to expedite that. We don't have anything set in stone, but we are trying to expedite that.
And so I guess my question there would it behoove you to, would it behoove this plan to include it in, for budgetary constraints? Because if you're not putting it in that year, then.
So when we appropriate for the CIP, we appropriate for the first 2 years. So it would cover both years.
Okay,
appropriation.
okay, great. Okay.
So some of this is I call it the Tetris of the budget Tetris, but then it's also staffing, because one of the things with these programs, if we're going to have 200,000 every year, and then we have a certain amount in sidewalks every year, a certain amount in paving, we want to deliver that because we don't want to, there'll be obviously some carryover in year over year, but we want to make sure that projects are delivered every year. So part of this is staggering it such that we can have the resources to execute.
I'm not sure if it was clear. I think what we had there was fiscal year 25K, which is actually this year, with the 100K in fiscal year 26, which is starting this fall. So those are fiscal year.
I see.
Not calendar year.
Sorry, can you,
Sure. The years that are listed in those details, in the detail plan, is for fiscal years. So fiscal year 26 starts June. July,
so this is a little bit in midway then?
Backwards looking.
Oh, great, okay. So you can propose even for this, you're proposing even for this year included, the fiscal, okay.
That's one of the differences between an operating budget and the capital budget. We can start a project anytime, and then we, unlike a operating budget rolls over to the next year. So, and then as the project executes, we can have additional budget in the out years. So,
Thanks. Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So I noticed that there's like 2 projects that are about like the flex sports courts, and one's like system-wide and one's Memorial Park. So does the system-wide not encompass Memorial Park?
I had noticed that as well and had the same question. My sense is that if you're talking about flex courts system-wide, you would include Memorial Park. And I think generally what we're talking about here, though, big picture, is that if we were doing a court refresh and there's desire for flex courts, we would look at funding and available budget, but hopefully include those, like we did with our most recent project for the pickleball.
So they would be considered as like one project?
It would likely be implemented as part of other projects. So, yeah. So it would be the most likely case for these is going to be the annual rehabilitation program projects. So if we're doing that project as part of a refresh renewal situation, adding additional striping may fall under available budget and not exceed kind of our anticipated spend.
Just to speak to kind of the more, like the planning effort and how that was reflected here, it's likely that earlier in the plan, there was a kind of system-wide prioritization of things people wanted to see, and then more specific visioning for each of the parks. So it got pulled into here both as kind of a vision for the larger city and then something more specifically at the time that was prioritized for Memorial Park. So public outreach would again happen to make sure that those priorities are current.
I do have a specific question about the turf audit, which I think is fabulous. I think we've needed that information. But I'm curious, it's just for my benefit, how do they measure or use? How are they, would reveal where lawn is in high demand for recreational? How do they do that? They have somebody there sitting there all day with a checkbox, or?
So this...
Where?
This is something I've been pushing for a number of years as well, and what my thought of this would be going through and identifying where something is, like a ball field where we have structured play and it's got a use and we have a schedule for its use. That's going to stay turf, and then the next step is, well, how do we want to maintain that so it maintains its playability throughout the year? Because we get a lot of complaints that, at the end of the year, a lot of our fields, particularly Ocean View, turns into basically dirt. And then so how do we better maintain that throughout the entire year? And then we look at things like Memorial Park, where we have the sort of event spaces where they do music in the park and whatnot. Again, those by the end of the year look pretty dirt. And so what do we want there in terms of how we maintain it? Is there a different type of grass that we want to have there that would be more accommodating to such heavy uses? But then you go into places like the Albany Greenway, where there's a lot of ornamental grass and then maybe some less structured play, people just out there kicking a soccer ball or whatever it might be, and kind of identifying that. And then is there a different use we would put there? And that's, I don't think the turf audit would necessarily make the decision of what that would be, but it would provide that information of where those areas are and what's the potential, and then kind of get into things like, hey, that patch of grass over there that's rarely used is costing us X amount of water or this much maintenance, so there's a better way we can do this for the long term.
So, great. You kind of just passed over the question, which was, how are you telling which block is just casually being used for kicking a soccer ball around. And I think it's going to be an important issue. Is why I'm pushing this. Is I think there's going to be real opportunities.
That's part of the maybe the public outreach piece.
Yeah.
Of this,
Okay.
Where,
Okay.
like some things are obvious.
Yeah.
and then-
Sure.
And then,
Sure.
And then it kind of gets graded down, and I think the turf audit isn't going to answer that question, but will provide the information that can fold it into the Albany plan to make that decision.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
The way I understand it, there's no legal definition like a size. You just have to explain it in a paragraph. This is used for X, Y, Z, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any other? Yeah.
One more question. Notice that there's no Albany bulb-related actions in the near term or midterm, and so I was just wondering if you can explain why that is.
Yeah, so we have a number of regulatory issues we're working through that really is putting, a stop on bulb work for at least a short run.
Yeah.
And I had two other quick questions. One is, how often does this capital improvement process occur in the city? Because this is the first time we're seeing it in a formal way here in the Parks Commission. So is this is it once every 5 years, or is it every year? So how frequently would we have opportunity for input on this?
So it doesn't have a specific kind of regular schedule. I would say when we get to a certain point where we're seeing, like, as projects, when they develop, we generally try to kick off projects, and it might be a list of them, and they have various schedules, and we'll see them dropping off the active list as we finish them. And so when we get to a point where we need to make kind of the next set of them, we might come with a larger CIP update like this. But we also come and propose projects regularly based on needs, based on kind of interests that's been kind of communicated to us, that we also kind of look at the master plan. We also, as resources develop, we look for new projects as well. The annual project rehabilitation program, I think, is going to be the kind of constant ongoing that will keep kind of staff, and that way we can, as projects die down, instead of coming back here and talking about small projects and then having to go to council and request for appropriations and kind of do a very more complicated project or process, we can talk here at the kind of maintenance level to keep ourselves kind of regularly delivering projects versus kind of starts and stops.
But to touch on your question or comment about this is the first time you've seen something like this, and I think in our past CIP efforts, this has been an evolving process, and if you look at the CIPs that we had, I don't know, 8 years ago when I came here, this is a much more developed and comprehensive, before they were just project lists in terms of, and now we're really trying to be more forward-looking and instead of sort of a one-shot, this is an ongoing conversation of what the needs are of the parks or transportation network, sidewalks, whatever that might be, and then that drives projects that either get into the programmatic program that we have, or maybe this rises to the level where it's a discrete project where we want to incorporate it into the CIP, and we can do that at almost any time. But that involves trade-offs of we have limited resources, so hey, this is a higher need, let's push this off. And so it's my hope is this isn't a once every 5-year conversation, but something that's more dynamic.
Okay. And it's much appreciated to see it all together and to be thinking about the big picture, and definitely a lot of thought has gone into it from staff. One other question I had was the word programming is used a few times, and so I think also one reason why we didn't see this before was partly because we were under the umbrella of the parks, of the recreation department, and so not under public works like we are now. And so if you asked somebody in the recreation department, tell me about Albany Greenway programming, they might say, oh yeah, we're going to do a yoga class outside every Thursday at 6 p.m. But here in this CIP, it says Albany Greenway programming. Is there another word that we can use, or is that, other than programming, or is that really the appropriate word that is used in these documents?
I think there's, Devorah just said we can workshop it. I think there's probably some making sure that we're using the same terminology as we develop and kind of move forward with these types of meetings, is to make sure we're all on the same page with discussions. Mark, you're moving forward. Would you like to?
I was going to say that's a really interesting point, because another one of our upcoming meetings, and next meeting, the meeting afterwards, is going to be the recreation program coming in, which might have yoga classes out on the Greenway on Tuesdays or wherever. So yeah,
We have the same problem with projects, because projects can have many meanings to different people. And I think the important thing is that when we're talking through what the scopes are and what we're proposing, that we're very clear with that, and make sure that we have these kinds of conversations to better understand each other. I would say that my initial thought on how to kind of differentiate is we have kind of a park programming for construction or for development, and then you have kind of a service or a recreational activity programming. So maybe that's something we can do, is make that a little clearer between activity programming versus kind of construction and improvement programming.
And whatever that can be done to clarify that, thank you.
Any questions before we go to public comment?
One more question.
Yeah.
So did you go to school for PowerPoint presentation?
I did.
It was rather impressive use of the tool. I couldn't.
Thank you. No, I did not.
And she wouldn't admit it if she had. Okay.
Well, the last one, which was unreadable, was my highlighting something and scanning it in, which she did much better than me.
Low bar in mind. Okay, so we'll open it up for public comment. Do we have anybody online wishing to comment?
There are people online, but no hands are raised right
Give them just 10 seconds to see if they want to raise their hand. Folks at home, if you have something to say, now's the time.
Nope,
No?
not yet. So I think we're good to go.
All right, very good. Discussion? I'm not sure there's much more to say. It was very interesting. Yeah, no, but if you've got comments.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just have an oddball question. I don't know if this is even the right meeting for it. But when you mentioned community garden, we're always talking about the one on Ocean View and never mentioned the one on Memorial Park. Is that city run, or is that just some other group?
So there are various agreements around that have come in different times, and I think the community garden maintenance system-wide, so there is one identified in the master plan for Albany Greenway. For me, it would be great to have sort of a unified approach to all of these and kind of an agreement and understanding. Some of these have happened over time, and there's long histories with them, but they've sort of developed separately, and it would be nice to have a single one. But yes, that's they're different animals.
The one at Memorial Park, a group said, hey, this would be a great space. Can we do this? And we said yes. And then I think the one at Ocean View was much more formal. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But it would be nice to have,
Sure.
Not bureaucratic, but a level of structure that's clear.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Any more comments?
Yeah, I had a comment that I agreed with Commissioner Chang-Frank that prioritizing the volleyball courts would be a good thing, particularly after the public comment that we got recently, and the need that was expressed there was eye-opening. What I would ask, if there's a way to prioritize the Terrace Park tennis court update, which I would hope facilitate the creation of a volleyball court there, a multi-use court, which would include volleyball.
So I think that would be something we discuss during kind of project scoping for that improvement, or the renewal project that we're looking at for the court. And then my understanding is correct that volleyball is actually next door, not at the court itself. It's at the basketball court. Am I
I think there's a couple of options at that park. We can do something on the, and this is where it gets into the details of what the scope is, whether we do something at the basketball court that's separate from the tennis courts, or do something on the tennis courts, and it's expanding one, different another. And so there's a lot of details to work through, but I think that's the intent of this, is once we settle on, okay, we're doing this, we want to open it up and see the full range of things that can be implemented.
Okay, so that would be at a later step to discuss the timing on these things?
So my sense is if we get the program and it starts in FY26, we would be jumping on that pretty quickly.
And I, for one, am looking forward to a sand basketball court. Okay, so I think we can.
I was not sure we were talking about sand. You said volleyball.
I think we can call this one to close. Did you get some useful feedback? I know we got useful feedback. I hope it was valuable to you as well.
Thank you.
Nothing else? Yeah, wonderful presentation. Very well. You should have some lessons on PowerPoint. That'd be great. And I think that's it on our agenda, correct? Future agenda items. Sounds like maybe we've already covered that as well. Thank you very much. Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody. This is great.
Do we not need to motion or vote or anything?
No, there's
to
no
do that?
action here.
Checking.
Just information. Yeah, thank you.
So for next couple of meetings, for April, so we will have the sugar sweetened beverage. So that's one thing we'll make recommendations. And like I said before, we'll have a memo similar to what we did last year that kind of outlines the projects that we recommended last year, what we did, what's still left, and then maybe some recommendations, and probably follow the same thing of here's sort of a lower dollar one, here's a medium dollar one, and here's a bigger one. And then we can have that discussion. I don't have the projected revenue, because I know there was a drop last year that,
Which is the point.
which is the point, but I think that drop was more drastic than people expected, and I don't know if that's the new normal or that was just an anomaly. So we will get that. Hopefully we'll get more information about what that dollar amount is. But then it would be a discussion of, hey, out of these things, is there something else that we want to add? Or is there, or what's our ranking? And then we would incorporate that into the council meeting study session, which I think happens fairly quickly after our next meeting. So that's that. So we have sugar sweetened beverage. We have, this is our quarterly tree removal meeting. And then we have potentially the street tree management plan, if we can get all the details lined out. And if that doesn't get lined out, we will have a presentation that was given to the Transportation Commission last month that I think would be relevant, particularly when we're talking the Albany Greenway and the bike path through Pierce Street Park. This was on regulating speeds on trails. So this is the e-bikes and things of that sort. And it was a presentation about different techniques on that, which I think would be really interesting, particularly when we're talking about new uses along the Greenway. So if we don't get the street tree management plan, we'll get the regulating speeds.
So I'm not sure this is the time for this, but I would like to see a little reshuffling of the agenda so that tree removals are early in the meeting.
Yeah, John is
not just for John, but also the public who might like to. Those are the items we often get people in. They don't need to sit through the whole meeting. I think we'd have.
That's actually a good point. I assume we can do that, but I'll check with the clerk and make sure that that's not.
Last I checked, I was the chair. Is it? All right. All right. All right. Any other? Yeah.
Yeah, I should have said this in announcements, but I'm going to tie it to a future agenda item. So Mayor Lopez signed the Mayor's Monarch Pledge.
Oh, good.
Which is amazing, kind of affirming the city's commitment to monarch conservation, but also part of that is there are certain actions that are required, like 3 a year, and they're different every year, that need to be taken throughout the city. And so it would be interesting to inquire as to what features of that the mayor is interested in implementing could be taken up by this.
So he gets to choose which 3 in a given, oh, okay, okay.
But like it could be implemented through outreach and education, creating pollinator habitat and parks, things like that. And so I think and then we have a pollinator habitat like at one of our memorials that could be, expanded. And so I just, I'd love to see like that strengthened and to see if there's a way that we can help implement that, if that is of interest.
Yeah, we can think about it. Yeah, thank you. Excellent.
And for me, I go to the Bulb regularly, and I noticed there were some improvements that were done there, I assume by East Bay Regional Park District. There's an ADA parking space, for example, that's right near the turnaround, and then there's that's what I think it is, or maybe it's access.
Yeah, so we actually executed that project.
We did?
Yeah, so that was, so we had some comments coming in. There was not sufficient ADA parking, and they were right. And I think what happened as the development of the East Bay Regional Parks project, everything kind of got out of whack. And so we commissioned the design and installed some ADA parking, compliant parking, and then fixed the ADA, the issues with the pathway.
Okay, that was the other thing I was going to say, is there was some major root pruning that happened, and the asphalt or near the turnaround on the sidewalk level was redone, and bollards redone and things like that.
Yep.
So that was all city?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's within our jurisdiction.
Okay. All right. Okay. And so those aren't the kind of things, even though it is at the Bulb, that's more of a transportation issue, or that doesn't come before us?
It's more of a staff level, like a corrective issue.
Okay.
It's an accessibility need, which kind of trumps a lot of things that we need to do, and it was expressed that way as well. So for both scopes, the ADA parking and the route issue was kind of.
I thought both improvements were great to see. What my request was going to be to have someone from East Bay Regional Parks come out and tell us what their other plans are for the area, but it sounds like it's all in-house, and you guys have explained it, and so thanks.
Yeah, so we have addressed the issues that were brought up to us, so that sort of is the end of that project.
Okay.
Okay, other suggestions, requests? I was trying to drag this out till 9, but I guess we'll have to close it now. All right, thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks.